podcast where we talk about retro gaming, basketball, wrestling, movies, TV, Star Trek, something else we're going to be talking about soon, and also just Christian faith. And today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be playing NBA Live 95. I'm going to be going through my season here. Game 1, the Seattle SuperSonics versus the Atlanta Hawks. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of these Seattle SuperSonics that are on this team and what they meant to past eras of basketball, and just kind of go through that. So, as we jump in here, there. We're in Seattle, Washington for this game. I'm starting lineups here. Kevin Willis, tough power forward. Nate Manning, underwhelming NBA career. Stacey Augmon, good defender. Usually got torched by Michael Jordan. Mookie Blaylock. Irvin, not Magic Johnson. Shawn Kemp, the guy I want to talk about mostly today. Detlef Schrempf. Kendall Gill, we'll talk a little bit about it. I don't understand. Kendall Gill got traded to the Seattle SuperSonics by the Charlotte Hornets, and they traded him back right before the '96 finals, and you have to wonder if they'd kept him, if maybe things would have worked out differently for them. But I haven't played this in forever. So Shawn Kemp, one of my favorite players of all time. Absolutely loved Shawn Kemp. And one of the things that was so special about him, he was so athletic. Like, he was just so talented. And he comes to the NBA in '89. Comes in '89. He comes in, obviously makes an impact right away. He's only 6 points a game initially. But you could just see the framework of what he was going to be. He was athletic. He could dunk. He kind of had an attitude. And it really helped define that era of 90s basketball. He kind of became the poster boy for like the hip hop era, and he was on like Rock and Jock on MTV, and he's got the highlight reel dunks. And then by the time he gets to like '92, that's when he's dunking on Alton Lister. That's when he's doing the thing. He gets teamed up with Gary Payton shortly thereafter, and all of a sudden they're running fast breaks, they're throwing alley oops, and this is just completely his. It was just the defining era of that. He's in the dunk contest, and he was just an unbelievable kind of face for what the NBA was becoming, and he doesn't often get his due. He's missed a wide open dunk too there. He doesn't often get his due, and I think it's because his run was so short. But he was 15, 10, 17 and 10, 18 and 10. They make the finals in '96 against the Bulls. They really, of all the teams that the Bulls played 6 teams in the finals, and or 5 teams in the finals, so they played the Jazz twice. But of all the teams the Bulls played, the Seattle SuperSonics really did the best job on them. Gary Payton was really he did a decent job on Michael Jordan. He was a little bit too small. Nate McMillan, gets his back hurt. But you have to wonder, like I was talking about Kendall Gill, who just got called for the foul. Kendall Gill gets traded by the Hornets to the Sonics, and then the Sonics actually trade him back to Charlotte. And you have to wonder if they had just kept him just one more year, and he's the guy that's guarding Michael Jordan. He matched up better. He's a better defender probably than Hersey Hawkins. And if he was the guy that was guarding Jordan, if that finals doesn't maybe become a little bit closer, maybe turn out differently, kind of a really interesting what if that nobody really thinks about. Because he was, Kendall Gill in a vacuum is probably just a better player than Hersey Hawkins was, but just an interesting sliding doors moment a little bit that the Sonics decided they didn't want Kendall Gill anymore. So, anyway, Shawn Kemp, he's at 15, 17, 19, 20, and 10, like every year, all the way up till 96, 97 when he's still with the Seattle SuperSonics at that point, and they make this curious. I say curious. I think it's just a silly decision, but they make this decision to pay Jim McIlvaine, who was their starting center, not very good. Like, he wasn't terrible, but he wasn't very good either. They gave him this big contract. It's like 7 years, $33 million, and it upsets Shawn Kemp. He's the franchise guy. He's the face of the team. He's becoming like the face of whatever this era was going to be in the NBA, to where he was like this. Like I said, he's popular. He was doing the highlight reel dunks, and people were really liking him. They give McIlvain this huge contract, and he's upset. The collective bargaining agreement at the time would not let them renegotiate Shawn Kemp's contract. So he's upset, and he eventually just demands a trade away from Seattle, and gets it. They send him off to to Cleveland, and so they make this trade with Kemp to Cleveland, and it's pretty much, he like comes in and he's like, still his numbers are 20 and 10 basically for a couple years. But what happens is, after the 97-98 season, there's an NBA the lockout. He comes into training camp when the season resumes, and he's like 300 pounds. And there were some eating problems. There were some drug issues that were going on. And all of a sudden, it's just over for Shawn Kemp. And within a couple years, he's on the Portland Trailblazers. And he is a shell of himself. He's just a big, like, I think when he goes to Portland, he averages 6 points a game. And he's like coming off the bench, and it's just clear that this thing was just done. And he was heavier. He was not as athletic. He wasn't playing as well. And within like 3 years, he's out of the NBA. And it's just like, what the heck? How do you go from being 20 and 10 to 6 points and 300 pounds and just a shell of himself, and just overnight almost? And that's how quickly it was over. And just a horrible end to somebody who had just a really fun NBA career. He was just so talented. Had that nice little mid-range jump shot. You see me probably, if you're watching it on video, you'll probably see me shoot that little mid-range jump shot with him repeatedly. Like I said, he's a tremendous athlete, and could just really jump out of the gym. He had the alt Lister dunk. He had those couple in there. He had alley-oops where he'd catch the ball and just like swing around the rim. He had, my favorite dunk of his is the one in Madison Square Garden, where he tells a story at Super Slams of the NBA, and says he was frustrated because he had just played a few minutes and fouled out, and he like goes down the lane and he just does like this double clutch, kind of reverse dunk down the lane, and throws it down. So Shawn Kemp. Oh, here comes Big Smooth, another guy I'd like to talk about. I love Big Smooth. If you don't know who Big Smooth and Sam Perkins is, you need to know. Of all the people that played in the 90s, if there was one guy who I could sit there and say, man, if they just transplanted him into 2026, his entire career would just be different, it's Sam Perkins. And Big Smooth, he was a three-point shooter. He could actually shoot the three ball. He had long arms. There's a three bucket. He had long arms. He could block shots. He could play in the paint. He actually played on those North Carolina teams with Michael Jordan back in the 80s. They won the 82 championship. And then he went on. He got drafted by Dallas. He had an okay run with Dallas. Then he plays for Lakers with Magic right before he comes to Seattle. And he just was he was like the prototype of what modern NBA centers are like now. And he's just a shooter, long arms, can defend. It was just, what you want from an NBA center in 2026. I think if you put him in this modern game, we'd be looking at him as like a Hall of Famer, multi-time All-Star. And in this era, he just he was a nice role player. But he had the potential to really be something. He's not shooting very well today. But he had the potential to be really something. And so, really like Sam Perkins. He's one of my favorite players, favorite random role players. His best season was probably 16-8, I think, for the Lakers in 91-92. That's the year after Magic retired. They just made the finals the year before. He actually hit the game winner in Game 1 of the 91 finals. And, Kittle Gill out. Kittle Gill's just hacking away. He hit the game winner in the NBA finals that year. He actually made, oh my gosh, Serena Marshall was. And that was the only game the Lakers won in the finals. And he was the one that nailed the shot. And you could also see him in the highlight of when Jordan does the switch-handed layup in the 91 finals. And he's just kind of overwhelmed by it all. So he's kind of looking at it like, oh boy. Serenas Marcellonis, fun foreign player back in the day. One of my favorite NBA Live players because he's a bucket. You can get him open. That's why the 90s were so interesting. People kind of have been crapping on the 90s and thinking it's not a bunch of players like that could actually compete today. There are a lot of guys that could actually compete in today's NBA. Like there was a lot of talent, and the difference was they didn't just like chuck up three. There was a lot of strategy into it, and a lot of it centered around low post play. Simple fact is, you get the ball close to the basket, you can score. And when you have talented big men, the NBA was full of them, and like that was how you kind of built your team. Is you got a big man first, and for the like there'd be David Robinson, there'd be a Patrick Ewing, Akeem Olajuwon, and there'd be all these guys, just talented centers that all brought something to the table. So when you were trying to build a team, that's where you started. You had to have somebody that could guard those guys and check those guys. And if you look back in the 80s, there was also Parrish, there was Lambeer, there was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, these other centers mentioned that were coming in. There were guys that were able to like dominate that post. So if you wanted to compete, you had to have somebody like that. And the guy who really changed that was Jordan, because it was like, can you really build a team around a 6'6" shooting guard that really scores a lot? He's not a point guard. He's not Jerry West, where he's going to kind of be a combo. He's not Oscar Robertson. He was an athletic 6'6" shooting guard. And turns out you can. And he won 6 championships eventually, but it took a while. And the NBA just kind of had changed a little bit. The NBA had changed a little bit, and so that kind of helped usher in that era. And now everybody thinks you have to have a wing instead of a center. And centers are almost like a luxury instead of a necessity. You look at Oklahoma City right now. I mean, they have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, obviously, but they have Chet, but he's kind of an afterthought in a lot of ways. He's not really like the focal point of their team, and it's more of the perimeter guys, Jalen Williams, and there's also Shai, and that's how they kind of focus their team. So, Hawks cooking. So yeah, Sam Perkins to me is the guy that if you just transplant him in 2026, his whole career looks different, and we think about him differently. And obviously can't do that, but it'd be great. Other guys in the NBA that you could do that with were Rasheed Wallace is like number 2 on that list. Rasheed Wallace was something, and he really was the prototype of what you wanted from guys in the NBA. I don't know what just happened there. But he was so tall, so athletic. He was so smooth from the 3-point line, and he could just score. I mean, score kind of at will. And if you put him in today's league, I mean, he's definitely. If you watch Rasheed play at all, he's like the prototype of what Karl Anthony Towns became, and has been for a while. And he just had. But the difference with him from like a guy like Towns, Rasheed could post up too. Like he could shoot the 3, but he also posted up really well. And so when you had Rasheed, you really didn't know how to guard him. Like, it was overwhelming how to guard him because he was just so talented. And he was long, 6'11", thereabouts. He could just score. And, he had a temper, obviously, and that kind of derailed some of his stuff. But just an absolutely talented basketball player. And gets a little forgotten. And because of he'll probably get remembered more because of the Jailblazers documentary that came out. But he needs to be remembered as and he's also an NBA champion. He helped lead the Pistons to a title when he got traded there. So, put some respect on Rasheed's name. He helped define that era as well. He was a talented power forward. The power forward boom. I mean, if you look at the way power forward, go back to Shawn Kemp a little bit, but you look at how power forwards were back then. There's obviously Barkley and Malone in the 90s. Kevin McHale was on his way out. He wasn't he was out by 93. So it wasn't like he was dominating the 90s. You could make a real case that Horace Grant was one of the better power forwards. And, he was an all-star when Jordan retired and was an important part of the Magic, making the finals. Was never an offensive force, but was always a good player. And so he was important. Larry Johnson for the Hornets and the Knicks. You could definitely make the case that he was one of the better power forwards. His run was very short, kind of similar to what we talked about with Shawn Kemp. He has that back injury. He is grandmama, like he was breaking into the to the mainstream media. He's on Family Matters with, and it's just like, man, Larry Johnson, he's awesome, and he's in the dunk contest and making all-star teams, and it was just like he was very marketable and helped kind of define some of that area. He was like that new generation of NBA player, and like I said, his run was short. So you got Larry Johnson, you got Horace Grant, to some extent Barkley Malone. Those are kind of the big power forwards. Shawn Kemp was probably the best third power forward in the '90s, and it wasn't really that close. Horace Grant was nice, and he was a nice player, but it wasn't like he was not in the same kind of stratosphere as Shawn Kemp. Later in the '90s, you get Chris Webber coming in. He gets drafted in like the mid '90s, but he doesn't really become like what we think of Chris Webber as for a while. It's really toward the late '90s, early 2000s when he becomes that kind of player. You also have Tim Duncan comes in '97, and that's his rookie year. He comes in, he's playing for the Spurs, obviously winning championships almost right away, but he's not really Tim Duncan until the early 2000s. So if you're talking about the '90s, it's really Barkley, Malone, and Kemp, and probably Larry Johnson, and that's where they were. I mean, they were good. You could also, you could debate Larry Johnson and Chris Webber. Chris Webber to me didn't really flourish until late. He was kind of bouncing around. Gets drafted by the Warriors. Goes to the Bullets. Then he goes to the Kings. There was a lot of he wasn't. It was kind of like he was. Oh no. He was just kind of unsettled. He wasn't mature, I don't think. I don't know if mature is the right word, but it was just like he wanted to. I don't know. There was something odd about his kind of early tenure in the NBA, and he figured it out. I mean, he had a good career, especially with Sacramento. He was one of the three best power forwards in the world. He'd probably be remembered a lot differently if he didn't play with KG and in the era with KG, Dirk, and Tim Duncan, and he was clearly the fourth of that. We didn't really talk about KG as power forward of the '90s. He didn't really hit his stride until the 2000s. Like, you could say '99 maybe, but I really remember KG kind of coming about like early 2000s. Like 2001, that's when KG was like, oh, it's KG. And then he starts winning the MVP in like 2003-4 range. He eventually goes to Boston and has that second act and wins the championship, and anything is possible, screaming around doing that stuff. So yeah, that's KG for me is not a '90s power forward. When we're talking about the '90s, it's probably Barkley, Malone, Kemp. The other guy we haven't talked about is this guy right here, the glove. Shawn Kemp gets his running mate his second year in the league, I think it was. I think Payton came in 1990, 91. He comes in, does his thing, becomes one of the best defenders of all time, nothing major. And obviously the connection right away is just there. They're throwing alley-oops, they're lobbing. And what's crazy to me is Payton came in, like I said, in 1991. That was his first year. Those two probably never played at the peak of their talents, ever. Like, because Kemp gets traded to Cleveland, and that's only Gary Payton's sixth year in the league. So they really never hit their stride together, and they still made the finals. They still played the Bulls about as tough as anybody played the Bulls in the 90s. And Gary Payton goes on to have a bigger, better career than what he had when he was with Shawn Kemp, which is crazy because they were so good together. And so they really never hit their full potential, in my opinion, together. And I just always wonder if Kemp had never given that contract to McIlvain and they had just rolled with Shawn Kemp and Gary Payton, and like this thing kept going, like where it would have ended up at. And just a super bummer that those two guys never got a chance to really grow and mature together. These guys, to me, the Seattle SuperSonics, that's why I picked them for this NBA Live season. I don't understand, how we got to where we're at with basketball now. I watched the NBA. I'm taping this the day after Game 5 of the Spurs Thunder series, and I sent out a tweet on the Pence Perspective X account. It said, I think I'm just done with NBA basketball for the season. I'm more annoyed watching basketball than I am entertained by it. Watching the Thunder is a chore. I don't understand why the media defends this team. I don't understand why they're in so much awe of this team. It's just unbelievable to me. The flopping, the foul bait, the official. As soon as I heard Mike Tirico on the broadcast last night say, "Well, the officials tonight and Tony Brothers," and I was like, I looked at my 9-year-old and I said, "They're in trouble. Like, this is going to be a really bad officiated game, and it's going to be tough." And it was. And there's like the screenshot of Lou Dort and Tony Brothers joking and laughing, and which is not a huge deal, frankly. Players and officials talk all the time. It's not, these guys see each other all the time. It's not a big deal. But it's just the optics were bad, especially the timing of it. They had just missed a blatant goaltend where the ball was on the rim and got smacked off. They didn't. Mitch Johnson tried to challenge it. He started waving his finger around. They ignored him, and he gets a technical right after because he's mad because they ignored him. And it was just a terrible thing. It really upswing the game. But the Spurs, I mean, honestly, I sent out a tweet saying that if the NBA, if anybody wanted to allege the NBA was rigging this Game 5 so the series would go 7, all they have to do is just show screenshots of Wemby defending with his hands down at the rim. He was with the whole first half. And I said Exhibit B would be his shot attempts because he only took like 15 attempts the entire game. He had his hands down. He was just not trying to post up whatsoever. And it was just such a super weird game. Just, it was like, what were the Spurs doing? The officiating was bad, but it wasn't like the deciding factor. The turnovers were, and the stupidity they were playing with. Like, I just don't get like what they were doing, and I just don't know. I don't. The NBA has gone from the sport where fundamentals mattered. You watch like the team like the Seattle SuperSonics back then. Shooting was so balanced. They would attack offensively so balanced. They shared the ball. They moved the ball. They had good shooters. They had low post presence. They defended well. And now it's basically if you can hit more threes or you can foul bait the referees more, you're going to win a championship. You're going to be considered one of the better teams. And I still don't know how we got to this place, but we ain't done with the 90s. We're not done with the 90s. We're still encouraged by the 90s that real basketball could come back. And I don't know what's going to cause the NBA goes cyclical, so there's always going to be something that swings something else. I don't know what's going to swing it back the other way, but right now Shea Styles winning, and this is how you have to win games in the league, and something will happen to where it changes. But the 90s was not perfect by any means, especially when we got to the late 90s. It was slow, it was plodding, it was sluggish. There were reasons they changed some of the rules to encourage scoring. And there was a lot of post play, and we eventually solved those things. And we hit a stride somewhere in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and basketball was a lot of fun. And now it's just become analytics took over, and it just seems stupid. Analytics have taken over to the point where before Game 4 of the Cavs-Knicks series, Kenny Atkinson, who's down 3-0, said, analytically, we're winning this series. Well, that's great. Well, analytics don't actually win you games. It doesn't matter on paper what you look like. It matters if you're actually good or not. So if you actually have more points than the other team. So your analytics can say whatever they want to say, but you're not winning actual basketball games at this point. So if you're not winning the actual basketball game, it doesn't matter. That's what I'm saying. So fuck it. So yeah, that's where we're at in modern basketball. That's why I wanted to do something with this podcast, because I just really wanted us to be able to talk about NBA history. As I play in these games, just talk about these different players. We didn't talk a lot about the Hawks. There's nobody on the Hawks I really wanted to talk about. Mookie Blaylock. We can touch on Mookie Blaylock real quick. Really good defender, really good point guard. Had some legal trouble, kind of getting forgotten in NBA history. Danny Manning was really touted coming out of college. Did not manifest itself into something special for the NBA, but he was solid enough. Had a nice career, All-Star nods. Kevin Willis played too. He was like 167 years old. He was a pretty tough player. This Hawks team, they'd already traded Dominique. He went to the Celtics, the Clippers. He went to the Clippers first, then the Celtics, and then he eventually ends up in the Spurs to finish out his career. And they had a kind of a weird transition period. Then they get like Steve Smith and Dikembe Mutombo, and they get that kind of group together, and it's a lot of fun too. So that era is coming, but this version of them was just not. It's not fun. They really needed just a different kind of group, and they eventually get that group. And like I said, they had Smitty, who I really like, Steve Smith, and Dikembe Mutombo. Danny Manning, I think, was still on that team as well. So that era's coming. It just wasn't there yet. I just won game one of this entire series. Look at that. Looky there. 80-65, man. I just cleaned up on the Hawks. Kemp, 20-5. 3 assists, 2 blocks. Solid. 68% shooting. That'll probably do it every time. We out-rebounded them horribly. They couldn't rebound with nothing. Out-assisted them, too. Check out the game stats. 6 from Detlef Schrempf, 12 from Kendall Gill, 13 from Gary Payton, 18 from Big Smooth. Terrence Marshall had 6. I don't see some steals. We got 1 steal across the board. We need to play some better defense. 2 blocks from Kemp. That was it. Don't know why it doesn't show total rebounds. That's terrible. Kemp's probably the best rebounder. Got some passing. Byron Houston. Look at Byron Houston. For the Hawks, Blaylock 14, 13 for Stacey Augmon. Plastic Man. We didn't talk about Plastic Man. Stacey Augmon. You're going to see him in a lot of Jordan highlight reels. He used to guard Michael all the time, and I think, especially when Jordan was with the Wizards and scored that 50, got that 51 on the Hornets, Stacey Augmon's actually guarding him. I think that's part of the reason he was able to drop 51. Jordan just figured people out, especially at his old age, and he just mentally destroyed them. And I think he just had Augmon figure out, it's like, I know I can score on this guy. And I think he just dissected him that day and just took him out. Right. Game 1 in the books. When we come back next time on the Pence Perspective podcast, for the NBA part, we're actually have some other stuff coming up here too. We're going to do this on Mondays. When we come back for that one, we are going to be playing against my beloved Chicago Bulls. So if you can see my shirt here, my beloved Chicago Bulls. So yeah, we're going to be playing against them. We'll talk about the Bulls, talk about the 93-94, I guess this would be the 94-95 Bulls, which no Jordan on this game, no Jordan at this point. They were a 500 team before he came back. So we're going to talk a little about when Michael came back. I was a kid at the time, so I can tell you a little bit about what I thought about him. And we'll just kind of talk about that next time. So thank you for listening here today. And we'll see you next time on the Pence Perspective. Thank you, guys.